Explorers. This is your lead scientist, Miss Shirley. Today's lesson is how to preserve stone monuments. In today's lesson, you will explore the following. People who work to preserve monuments check for the stone for cracks. The faces at Mount Rushmore are carved into a kind of rock called granite. Water can seep into cracks in the rock. During cold weather, the water freezes into ice. As ice becomes solid, it expands and gets a little bigger. Ice inside cracks in rock pushes the granite apart little by little. The cracks can get bigger. Over time, small cracks can cause large chunks of rock to break off and fall. This happens to carved stone and to natural rock too. The word preserve means to keep something the way it should be. If this keeps happening to the rock, then the crack in the rock will get bigger and bigger and can eventually break the rock apart. This is why workers are trying to prevent at Mount Rushmore. This is why they preserve the monument by checking for cracks. To preserve Mount Rushmore, workers fill cracks so water cannot get into them. This protects the sculpture, and they fill the cracks with material called silicone. Silicone is like a thick glue. It's hard and rubbery when it dries. Silicone is waterproof, and it keeps water out of the cracks. In our last lesson, we explored the following. Weathering and erosion by water played a role in forming the unique shape that students see for the Grand Canyon and wave rock of Perth. It possibly took millions of years for water to change the landform that we are about to look at. Students imagine a bar of soap in its original form and a second bar of soap under a water faucet, using its to wash hands until it gets noticeably smaller. This is similar to erosion of rock in nature's element of sun, wind, rain, and snow. The Grand Canyon is a national park in northern Arizona. Water carved the rock into a canyon over millions of years. Wave Rock of Perth is located in Australia. This landform is said to resemble a large wave and was carved into its unique shape by groundwater. Looking at Mount Rushmore, even though the stone monument is outside and the stone can get very hard, weather like wind and water can still damage it. That's why it's so important to maintain the stone. So let's introduce some words we need for this lesson. Silicone is like a thick glue. It's hard and rubbery when it dries and is waterproof. Preserve, maintain something in its original existing state. Weathering, the process of wearing or being worn by long exposure to the environment. Erosion, the gradual destruction, diminishing, which making smaller of something. And maintain, to keep the same, keep steady, keep up, or keep going. All right, science explorers, we're going to learn more about how we can preserve a stone monument, and we're going to investigate and explore some questions about it. Let's watch the video that we saw in our previous lesson about how weathering of rocks are caused. In this experiment, they filled the balloon with water. Then they used plaster of Paris. They took the balloon filled with water and put it in a cup, and then they put plaster of Paris on top. So they covered the balloon with water in the cup with the plaster of Paris. Now they took that cup with the plaster of Paris and also the balloon that's inside, that's covered by the plaster of Paris, inside the freezer. So what happened? The plaster of Paris cracked open because what happened was the balloon filled with water turned into ice and it expanded. And because it expanded, it was able to break through the plaster of Paris. And you can see this is another example of the other balloon that was filled with water in which it cracked open and the balloon came out because it was filled with ice and it expanded. Okay, science explorers, let's investigate and explore more information on how we can preserve stone monuments. Even though the stone monument is outside and stone can be very hard, weather like wind and water can still damage it. That's why it's important to maintain the stone. What do you think maintain stone means? What must be done? Think, 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 science explorers. Write your response. Now, the word preserve means to keep something the way it should be. Do you think cracks in the stone of the monument are bad? Why or why not? Think, 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 science explorers. Write your response. This page talks about how ice can crack rock, just like students explored in the investigation in the previous class. So Logan learns that people who work to preserve the monument check the stone for cracks. The face at Mount Rushmore are carved into a kind of rock called granite. Water can seep into the cracks in the rock. During cold weather, the water freezes into ice. As ice becomes solid, it expands or gets a little bigger. Ice inside cracks in rock pushes the granite apart little by little, and the cracks can get bigger. Over time, small cracks can cause large chunks of rock to break off and fall. This happens to carved stone and to natural rock too. So explain how ice can crack rock. Think, 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 science explorers. Write your response. Additionally, how does water ruin rock? If this keeps happening to the rock, then the crack in the rock will get bigger and bigger and can eventually break the rock apart. This is what workers are trying to prevent at Mount Rushmore. This is why they preserve the monument by checking for cracks. So, think, 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 science explorers. Write your response. And in summary, this page talks about how workers preserve Mount Rushmore. To preserve Mount Rushmore, workers fill cracks so water cannot get into them. This protects the sculpture. They fill the cracks with material called silicone. Silicone is like a thick glue. It's hard and rubbery when it dries, and silicone is waterproof, and it keeps water out of cracks. So what do workers do to the cracks in Mount Rushmore? Think, 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 science explorers. Write your response. What did you think of today's lesson? Okay, science explorers, we learned how to preserve a stone monument. Until next time, ciao for now.